Final ending of this burning house, other parts down below. Sounds manageable, I said, pondering the scale of Uncle Tom's operation. It seemed like a solid, small-scale business, the kind that formed the backbone of many communities. The idea that had been percolating in my mind began to solidify as I contemplated the potential of Uncle Tom's business. It wasn't just about the business itself, but about what it represented, an opportunity, a fresh start, and a chance to make a real difference. I turned to Ronnie, who was still basking in the sunlight. You know, Ronnie, I've been thinking. Maybe there's a way I can help out here, in a way that makes sense for everyone. Ronnie looked at me, curiosity evident in his expression. Yeah, what are you thinking? I'm considering the possibility of partnering with a local business like Uncle Tom's. Maybe I could offer some of my expertise, help them expand into energy-efficient systems. It would be a way to bring some of the technology and methods I've developed into a new market, without the pressure and betrayal I faced back home. Ronnie sat up, suddenly more attentive. That's a hell of an idea, B.I. Tom's always looking for ways to grow the business, and something like that could really set him apart around here. I nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Exactly. It's not just about the business, it's about creating something meaningful, something that benefits everyone involved. I have the technical knowledge and the patents, and Tom has the local presence and know-how. It could be a win-win. Ronnie grinned. I'll say, you'd be like a breath of fresh air in the industry around here. And it's a good way to stick it to those backstabbers back home, showing them you can succeed anywhere. I smiled, feeling more optimistic than I had in a long time. Let's go back inside. I think I'm ready to discuss this idea further. Maybe it's time to start a new chapter right here in Newfoundland. Long term, we're looking at a business that could significantly change the energy landscape in Canada and potentially in other parts of the world, I explained. The controllers are just the starting point. We can expand into full home energy management systems, integrating with renewable energy sources, and maybe even branch into commercial applications eventually. I paused, gauging their reactions. As for numbers, it's hard to predict exactly, but I believe we could be looking at multi-million-dollar revenues within a few years. The demand for energy-efficient solutions is growing rapidly, and we have the technology to meet that demand. Plus, with the exclusivity agreements, we have a protected market to some extent. Darren seemed to be processing this information, nodding slowly. That's quite an opportunity, and you're sure your company in the U.S. will be our primary customer? Absolutely, I affirmed. My company needs these controllers, and by having a reliable, exclusive supplier in Canada, it's a win-win situation. I trust your work, and I know you'll maintain the quality we need. Tom spoke up, and what about the initial setup? Getting the right people, the equipment, that sort of thing. That's where my investment comes in, I said. The $500,000 is for setting up the manufacturing line, getting the necessary equipment, and hiring the initial staff. I'll also help with the technical training and setting up the production processes. We want to hit the ground running. Jeffrey, who had been listening intently, finally chimed in, and what's the catch, Honor? There's got to be a downside. I smiled wryly. The catch is that we have to work hard and fast. We're starting from scratch in a competitive market. And yes, there are risks, but I believe the payoff is worth it. We have a cutting-edge product and a solid market. The rest is up to us to make it work. There was a moment of silence as they all considered the proposition. Finally, Darren broke the silence. Well, I say it's worth a shot. It's not every day an opportunity like this lands in your lap. I could feel the energy in the room shift as excitement began to build. Then let's do it, I said, feeling a sense of purpose and optimism that had been missing for a long time. Let's build something great together. If you have the success I envision, within 5 years, you could be employing 30 to 40 people here, and perhaps another dozen in Vancouver. It's not going to be a walk in the park, but I'll be collaborating with you, bringing my experience to the table, I explained, feeling a sense of excitement at the prospect of this new venture. That's a significant expansion, and quite rapid, Tom noted, his eyebrows raised in slight skepticism. I began alone, with very limited resources and patents that weren't as robust as these. In 7 years, I had 50 employees, and we could have expanded more if I hadn't been so cautious about growth. Last year, we did over 10 million, I said, hoping to instill some confidence in them. Darren seemed thoughtful. Do you mind if we discuss it among ourselves? Not at all. But remember, time is of the essence. I'll be leaving in a few days, and I'd like to set things in motion before then, I urged, knowing that swift action was crucial. Tom interjected, we can't possibly complete all the formalities by then. I understand. Let's start with a solid plan and a handshake agreement. I'll provide the funding and the patents. Just need your word to proceed. The formalities can follow, I offered, emphasizing the need for trust and swift action. I excused myself, grabbed my guitar and a beer from Anne, assuring her I'd only drink it outside. Alone with my thoughts and my guitar, I found solace in the strings, playing a tune I'd been working on during a hike a month ago. Ronnie joined me, curious about the melody. I shared it was something I'd been tinkering with, and before I knew it, we were collaborating, with him adding his touch to the piece. As we played through the improved version, I was amazed at the transformation. You really brought this to life, I complimented him. So, you're saying you can really improve anything? I teased Ronnie, amused by our music collaboration. Before he could respond, Jeffrey appeared, announcing that I was needed inside. When I entered, Darren and Tom immediately stood up, extending their hands in a gesture of partnership. We're in, Honor. Ready to start as soon as you are, Darren declared confidently. Tom echoed his sentiment. We appreciate the chance you're giving us. We'll do our best not to disappoint. I shook their hands firmly, feeling a mixture of excitement and responsibility. I'm confident in your abilities. Let's set up a bank account tomorrow, and I'll transfer the initial funds. I'll leave the patents with you, and I'll work on getting an engineer here by the end of next week. Meanwhile, I trust you'll start putting the business pieces together. Darren's face lit up with enthusiasm. Absolutely. This is going to be an adventure. The evening found us back on George Street, ready for another impromptu performance. Janie was already there when I arrived, her presence a pleasant surprise. I didn't know where we'd be until just now, I explained, noticing her slightly irritated tone. Janie pointed out a banner I had missed, the Runner and Waiter Show, featuring Honor the Noof. I was taken aback, not realizing our casual jam sessions had garnered such attention. Seeing my surprise, Janie chuckled. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy yourself and play like you always do. I nodded, though a bit overwhelmed. I need a moment with Ronnie, I said, trying to gather my thoughts for the unexpected night ahead. She laughed as I wandered off to find Ronnie, who was busy helping a guy set up his drum set on stage. What's all this, Ronnie? I asked, a mix of surprise and apprehension in my voice. Just setting up, he replied nonchalantly. So, we're the band for the night, and now we have a drummer. What else is happening here that I'm unaware of? Ronnie shrugged, his glance drifting to where his on and off girlfriend was standing. Not much. Greg, the owner and a friend, offered us this gig. It's a decent opportunity, and there's even a bit of pay. Plus, free drinks for the band all night. People are excited to hear us play, we can't let them down. I was taken aback. But Ronnie, we haven't even practiced together. And now we're adding a drummer. Pete's a pro. He's played with me before and can keep up with anything. Trust me, we'll be fine. It's just like the other night, only better. I remembered the other night all too well, and how it ended. I ended up in Janie's bed after that other night, remember? Ronnie's response was all confidence. And are you complaining? You should be thanking me. Relax, it's going to be fine. He was surprisingly right. We played through 3 sets, the crowd growing larger and more enthusiastic with each one. Janie joined us for several songs, her presence and talent electrifying the audience. It seemed like she was a local favorite, the crowd erupting in cheers every time she took the stage. Ronnie seemed to know everyone in St. John's, occasionally inviting people up on stage for a song or two. The bar was buzzing with energy, people singing along, drinking, and dancing without a care in the world. As the night progressed, the energy was infectious. I found myself caught up in the excitement, slightly tipsy and thoroughly enjoying the moment. Janie, equally in high spirits, was close by my side, adding to the night's charm. Despite the lack of rehearsal and the spontaneous nature of the evening, it turned out to be an unforgettable experience. The crowd's response to our music, especially the chorus of our original song, was exhilarating. The sheer joy of performing, the camaraderie on stage, and the warmth of the crowd made it a night to remember. For a few hours, all the complications and heartaches of life seemed to fade away in the music. The crowd's energy was palpable, their cheers and claps echoing through the bar. Throughout the night, I mostly followed Ronnie's lead on the songs, but the audience didn't seem to mind. Their enthusiasm was infectious, but I couldn't help but notice the young girls in the crowd, looking at me with admiring eyes. Janie's teasing whisper in my ear brought a smile to my face. Don't give those girls any ideas. Remember, you're not exactly available, she said, her voice tinged with humor. I chuckled, putting down my guitar for a short break. Jealous, Janie. Her response was playful. Jealous of you. A married man, a father, and let's not forget, an out-of-towner. Why would I be jealous? As she turned to walk away, I playfully pulled her back and kissed her, much to the delight of the audience. Her cheeks flushed with color, and she playfully scolded me before slipping away from my embrace. I know, Janie. It's complicated right now, I said, feeling the weight of my situation. We'll see, Honor, she replied, a hint of seriousness beneath her smile. She then pulled me off stage to where cold beers awaited us, courtesy of the owner. Ronnie was there, beaming with pride. I had a feeling you'd be a hit, Ronnie said, his girlfriend by his side. We should do this more often. I glanced at Ronnie, feeling a mix of gratitude and frustration. We'll discuss it, Ronnie, I replied noncommittally. The owner seemed hopeful about a future arrangement, but I wasn't ready for that conversation just yet. After our final encore, the energy of the night finally caught up with me. I was spent, my voice nearly gone. It had been a night to remember, but now all I wanted was some rest. As Pete packed up his equipment, I knew I needed to have a serious conversation with Ronnie. We need to talk, I said firmly. He was all smiles, still riding the high of the evening. Go ahead, Honor. What's on your mind? I took a deep breath. You know I can't stay here indefinitely. I'm going back in a couple of days. I have responsibilities, things to sort out. Ronnie's expression shifted from excitement to frustration. You're telling me this now? After all the plans, we're booked for next weekend, 2 nights. They're expecting us. I was taken aback. You should have discussed this with me first. I have a life and commitments back home. I can't just drop everything. What you said to Uncle Darren. I agreed to help get things started, to visit occasionally. But I can't commit to anything full-time. We can still play, but we need better communication. You can't make decisions like this without talking to me first. He looked crestfallen. So, when will you be back? I realized then that we had an audience. Janie stood behind me, beers in hand, and Ronnie's girlfriend, Rhonda, waited nearby. I can't say for sure right now. Once I'm back home and figure things out, I'll let you know. Probably in about 3 weeks. Ronnie nodded, a mixture of understanding and disappointment on his face. All right, Honor. Just don't leave me hanging. I won't, I assured him, and he walked away, taking Rhonda with him. Janie stepped forward, handing me a beer. When were you planning on telling me, Honor? I took a sip, feeling the weight of her question. I was going to tell you tonight. Everything just happened so fast today, talking to my daughter, the business deal with Darren and Tom. I didn't mean to keep you in the dark. She looked into my eyes, searching for sincerity. I believe you, Honor. It just stings a bit. You'll come back, right? With a clearer mind. I promise, Janie. I'll be back, and I'll sort everything out. I just need some time to handle things back home. I reached out, pulling her close, hoping she could feel the honesty in my words. I promise, Janie. I'll try to sort things out. You've been a bright spot in a dark time for me, I assured her, feeling the weight of her presence in my life. She closed the distance between us, and we shared a deep, meaningful kiss. Just remember, Honor, we have potential for something great here, she whispered. The next day was a whirlwind of activity. I had financial matters to attend to, preparing for my return home, where complicated situations awaited me with Beth and my family. I woke up earlier than usual, determined to start the day right. After a nutritious breakfast, I headed to the bank to oversee a substantial financial transfer for the new business venture with Darren. The process was a leap into the unknown but felt strangely exhilarating. After lunch, I returned to the hotel for my routine call home. As soon as I logged in, Mrs. D's anxious voice filled the room. Honor, are you there? She sounded frantic. I'm here, Mrs. D. What's wrong? I asked, alarmed by her distressed appearance. It's Beth, Honor, she cried. She's disappeared. She left a note, and I don't think she's coming back. Her tears made my heart race. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. Beth, gone. My mind raced, thinking of our children. Is she hurt? What about Marie and Billy? I asked, my voice trembling. No, the children are fine for now. But Beth, she just vanished, Mrs. D sobbed. I felt a surge of guilt and responsibility. My absence, my preoccupation with my own issues, had left Beth to manage everything alone. Now she was gone, and the reality of my neglect hit hard. What did the note say, Mrs. D? I asked, bracing myself for the answer. Sure, take your time, I responded, my heart heavy with the news of Beth's disappearance. A few minutes later, Janie called back. Honor, what's going on? I have to leave immediately, I said, trying to mask the urgency in my voice. There's an emergency at home. Beth's gone missing. There was a pause on the line, a silence filled with unspoken emotions. Oh, Honor, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. Just be here for me, Janie. That's all I ask. I need to go back and find Beth and make things right for my kids. I understand, she said softly. Please be safe, and let me know if you need anything. We'll be here for you when you get back. I appreciate that, Janie. Thank you. I'll keep in touch as much as I can, I assured her, feeling a twinge of sadness at leaving her behind. After hanging up, I quickly packed my things, my mind racing with thoughts of Beth, the children, and the uncertain journey ahead. I was determined to find Beth and bring her back, no matter what it took. The drive back home was going to be long and arduous, but the urgency of the situation propelled me forward. The limo ride gave me time to think, to process everything that had happened so suddenly. Beth's disappearance, my abrupt departure from Newfoundland, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead, it all weighed heavily on me. But Janie's words lingered in my mind, offering a semblance of comfort amid the chaos. When I arrived at Aunt Jean's house, the lights were on, and she was waiting for me, worry etched on her face. As I got out of the limo, she hurried to greet me, her expression a mix of relief and concern. Honor, you're here. Thank God, she said, embracing me tightly. I returned her hug, feeling a little more grounded in her familiar presence. I am. Thanks for being here, Aunt Jean. We went inside, and she immediately started filling me in on what she knew. According to her, Beth had been increasingly distraught over the past few days, her guilt and regret over her actions consuming her. The note she left was a shock to everyone, and now the family was in turmoil. I sat down heavily, my mind racing. I need to start looking for her first thing in the morning. I have to find out what happened, why she left like this. Aunt Jean nodded, her face lined with worry. I'll do whatever I can to help, Honor. The kids need their mother, and you. You need to figure out what you're going to do. I knew she was right. My children needed me now more than ever, and I had to confront the shattered pieces of my marriage to Beth. But amidst all this, my thoughts kept drifting back to Janie and her understanding, her support. It made me realize how complex and tangled my emotions had become. After a restless night, I woke up early, determined to start the search for Beth. I made a few calls to her friends and family, trying to gather any clues about where she might have gone. I also contacted a private investigator, hoping they could expedite the search. As I sat there, staring at the screen, the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Beth had seen everything: my performances, the fun I was having, the apparent closeness with Janie. It was all laid out in front of her, a digital chronicle of my time away. The guilt and regret I felt were overwhelming. I had left to clear my head, not to flaunt a new life in front of my wife who was struggling with her own demons. The videos painted a picture of a man moving on, embracing a new world, while she was left to grapple with the consequences of her actions alone. It must have been a gut-wrenching sight for her. No wonder she felt she had to leave. Closing the laptop, I felt a heavy burden settle over me. My departure, meant to be a time for healing and reflection, had inadvertently pushed Beth further into despair. I should have been more aware, more sensitive to how this could have affected her. Now, my priority was to find her, to talk to her, to explain, and hopefully to start mending the fractured pieces of our life together. Whether our marriage could be salvaged was another question, one that seemed daunting in the current chaos. But I couldn't think about that now. Beth's safety and mental well-being were paramount. The quiet of the house enveloped me as I lay in bed, thoughts racing. I had to start early in the morning, check our accounts for any clues, and get the investigator moving. The kids would be up soon, and I needed to be there for them, to maintain some semblance of normalcy in their suddenly upended world. I scrutinized the gas charge, trying to glean any useful information from it. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Beth heading west towards New York gave me a direction, but it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. The vastness of the possibilities was overwhelming, yet it was a thread I had to follow. Mrs. D looked weary but hopeful when I shared the news. "At least it's something," she said, trying to sound optimistic. "Maybe she's gone to see a friend, or just needed some time away to think." I nodded, though I wasn't entirely convinced. Beth's abrupt departure, coupled with her despairing note, painted a darker picture. I couldn't help but feel responsible, my actions, or lack thereof, possibly pushing her to this edge. "Dave's coming in this afternoon," Mrs. D continued. "He's worried sick. Maybe you two can brainstorm a bit more on where she might have gone." I agreed, though I wasn't sure what more we could come up with. The investigators I had hired were professionals, and if anyone could find Beth, it would be them. In the meantime, I felt helpless, stuck in a waiting game filled with anxiety and self-reproach. The kids, thankfully, were blissfully unaware of the tension. Marie was her usual bubbly self, and Billy was too young to understand what was happening. I spent the morning with them, trying to keep things as normal as possible. It was a temporary reprieve from the worry gnawing at me. When Dave arrived, we sat down and went over everything I knew. He was visibly shaken, the lines of concern etched deeply on his face. "She's never done anything like this before," he said, his voice heavy with worry. "We'll find her, Dave," I assured him, though my confidence was more for his sake than my own belief. The day passed with no further clues. The investigators called in with nothing new, and I felt the weight of each passing hour. Beth was out there somewhere, alone and distressed, and all I could do was wait and hope that she would be found safe. As night fell, I tucked the kids into bed, reading them their favorite stories. Their innocent laughter was a balm to my troubled soul, but it was a temporary relief. Once they were asleep, I sat in the quiet house, feeling the enormity of the situation. "You guessed correctly," I said coldly, my gaze fixed on him. The sight of Dale, standing there with his bruised face, stirred a mix of anger and disdain in me. I wanted to let you know that I didn't know she was going to leave," Dale stammered, avoiding direct eye contact. "When I heard she was gone, I felt I had to come and tell you." "Tell me what, Dale?" "That you're sorry. That doesn't change anything. You were part of the reason she's gone." My voice was steady, but inside, a storm of emotions raged. He shuffled his feet, looking even more uncomfortable. "I know I can't change what happened, but I truly didn't know she was planning to leave. And I'm worried about her, too. Worried about her. Now that's rich coming from you." I couldn't hide the sarcasm in my voice. "Your concern is a little late, don't you think? I get that you hate me, and you have every right to," Dale said, finally meeting my gaze. "But I just thought you should know that Beth wasn't herself these last few weeks. She was distant, agitated. I think she was struggling with a lot more than just our affair." His words, while they should have been meaningless, struck a chord. Beth had been struggling, and I had been too caught up in my own hurt to see the depth of her distress. "I don't need your insights on Beth," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "But thanks for coming by and showing me how much you care." He nodded, looking as if he wanted to say more but thought better of it. "If there's anything I can do, let me know." I didn't respond, just watched him turn and walk away. Once he was gone, I stood on the porch for a few more minutes, trying to process the conversation. Despite my disdain for Dale, his words lingered in my mind. Beth's actions weren't just about betrayal, they were a sign of a deeper turmoil. Shaking off these thoughts, I went back inside. There was work to be done, leads to follow, and two kids who needed their father. Finding Beth was my top priority, but I also needed to keep our family's life as stable as possible under the circumstances. No wonder, I said, feeling a wave of shock and anger wash over me. So, you're saying Fred manipulated and drugged her? That's vile. Gail nodded solemnly. Yeah, he's always been a manipulator, and Beth was vulnerable. She was feeling neglected and lonely. Fred took advantage of that. He made her feel wanted, listened to her problems, and then used her. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but it was a picture I didn't want to see. And you knew about this. Why didn't you stop him? He sighed, looking down. I tried, in my own way. But Beth, she was so lost, so confused. And Fred, he's Fred. He always gets his way. I warned him to back off, but he didn't listen. He never does. I felt a surge of frustration. So you let your brother destroy my marriage, hurt Beth, and you did nothing. Dale's expression was one of regret. I didn't know how to handle it. I'm sorry, Honor. I really am. I should have done more. I should have told you. Sorry doesn't cut it, Dale. Your brother is a predator, and you let him prey on my wife. On Beth. My voice was tinged with bitterness. He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I know, and I'll live with that guilt. But right now, you need to find Beth. She's out there, alone and vulnerable. Who knows what state she's in? I took a deep breath, trying to control the anger boiling inside me. I'm going to find her. And when I do, Fred will pay for what he's done. Dale looked at me, a mix of fear and relief in his eyes. I'll help in any way I can. Just let me know. I nodded curtly. I'll let you know. As we walked back to the house, my mind was racing, planning my next moves. Finding Beth was my top priority. Dealing with Fred would come later. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let him get away with what he'd done. Not by a long shot. The investigator cleared his throat, sensing my impatience. It's a specialized tracking software that works with public and private surveillance systems. It can identify and track individuals based on facial recognition. The technology is fairly new, but it's been effective in several cases similar to yours. I leaned in, intrigued despite my frustration. How accurate is it? It has a high accuracy rate, but it depends on the quality of the surveillance footage and the availability of recent images of the person we're tracking. I thought for a moment. All right, let's do it. Anything that could lead us to Beth. We'll need a recent photo of her, the more recent the better. Also, any information on her possible whereabouts or last known location can help refine the search. I nodded, already pulling up a photo of Beth on my phone. I'll send you this picture. It's from a couple of weeks ago. As for her last known location, she withdrew money from an ATM here in town and made a gas purchase heading west toward New York. That's a good start. We'll input the data and let the software do its work. We'll keep you updated on any developments. Thank you, I said, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. After ending the call, I sent the photo to the investigator and tried to focus on what needed to be done next. My mind kept drifting back to Jane and our conversations. Despite the chaos of my current life, her voice was a soothing presence, reminding me of a possible future that was different from the wreckage of my past. I sat down at my desk, my thoughts a whirlwind of Beth, my children, the business, and Jane. There was so much to untangle, so many decisions to make. Great, I already have someone in mind. A friend of mine who specializes in soundproofing and acoustics. He's done some amazing work for local musicians and even a couple of recording studios. I'll coordinate with him and get you a proposal. That sounds perfect, Luann. I trust your judgment. Just keep me posted on the cost and timeline. I will. And Honor, I'm really happy you're making a space for your music. It's important to have a creative outlet, especially with everything you're going through. Her words resonated with me. Thanks, Luann. It means a lot. After ending the call, I sat down in what would soon be my new music room, letting the calmness of the space wash over me. It was a brief respite from the chaos of the past few days. I pulled out my phone, intending to check in with the investigators, but instead, I found myself dialing Jane's number. Hey, Honor, she answered, her voice a soothing balm. Hi, Jane. I just wanted to hear your voice. It's been a rough day. I'm here for you. Tell me about it. I recounted my conversation with the investigator and my plans for the music room. She listened intently, offering words of encouragement. It sounds like you're taking steps to heal, Honor. I'm proud of you. Her words, so full of understanding and support, were exactly what I needed. Thanks, Jane. I miss you. I miss you too. But you're doing what's right, and that's important. Her phone calls traced to a small town in the Adirondacks, about a 5-hour drive from here, I revealed to Mrs. D and Dad Daniels. Their eyes widened with a mix of hope and apprehension. Are you going there? Mrs. D's voice trembled slightly. Yes, I'm leaving first thing in the morning. I'll drive up and see if I can find her. Dad Daniels nodded, his face etched with worry. I want to come with you. I hesitated for a moment. I think it might be best if I go alone. If she's there, and she's avoiding us, seeing me first might make it easier to talk her into coming home. He looked like he wanted to argue, but then he sighed and nodded. All right, son. But you call us the moment you find anything. Anything at all. I will, I promise, I assured them. After they left, I spent the rest of the evening making preparations for the trip. packing a small bag, checking my car, and most importantly, spending time with Marie and Billy. I read them extra stories, tuck them in, and promise them I'd be back soon with good news. Later that night, I called Jane to update her. Her voice was filled with concern and support. Be careful, Honor, and call me when you can, okay? I will, I promised. I don't know what I'll find, but I need to do this. For Beth, for the kids, for me. I know, she said softly. Just take care of yourself too, all right? Do these places mean anything to you? My dad inquired. Yes, they do. She's retracing the route I took when I first left home. Her last call came from Front Royal. She's likely hiking through Shenandoah Park at this moment. What's your plan? I'm going to find her, I replied. I didn't rush off immediately. I caught a few hours of sleep and left at 4 in the morning to be fresh for the journey ahead. Avoiding city traffic was also on my mind. It was a 7-hour drive, including a stop at REI to grab some essential gear, just in case my estimate of her location on the trail was off. My gear was minimal: a backpack, a tarp with a bug tent, a rumple-down blanket, and a light pad, plus a few small necessities. It all weighed less than 6 pounds, allowing me to move swiftly, even jog if needed. I carried minimal clothing, just an extra pair of socks, no luxuries, and no cooking equipment. Energy bars and trail mix would be my sustenance. Based on her likely pace of 20 to 25 miles per day, I had an idea of where she might be. I parked 20 miles beyond the furthest point I thought she could have reached and started hiking in the opposite direction, hoping for the best. My only worry was the weather. There was a chance of rain, and my gear wasn't ideal for a downpour. My lightweight Patagonia Houdini windbreaker was perfect for a drizzle, but not much else. Still, it was a favorite piece of mine, one of the few I kept from my initial hike. Before hitting the trail, I sent a text to Jane, letting her know I might be unreachable for a couple of days but would update her later. Then I called Beth's parents to inform them I was on the trail. They sounded understandably worried. I even managed a quick chat with the kids before setting off. I maintained a brisk pace, occasionally breaking into a jog. Knowing the trail well and equipped with lightweight gear, I could cover up to 40 miles in a day if necessary. As daylight began to wane, I worried I might have miscalculated her location. But then, almost out of nowhere, I nearly bumped into her. I recognized her instantly, even though she didn't see me at first. Her focus was on the ground ahead as she trudged along with an oversized backpack. A couple of young guys with beards were keeping pace with her, attempting conversation, which she seemed to be ignoring. I stood still, waiting as she approached, her posture hunched, each step looking like a struggle. When she was just a yard away, she probably noticed my feet. As she tried to sidestep me, I mirrored her move to block her path. One of the guys who had been accompanying her called out, "Hey, move aside." At that moment, Beth finally looked up, and her reaction was priceless. She gasped and staggered back, losing her balance and falling onto the ground. "Honor," she cried out, seemingly overwhelmed. The guys, to their credit, seemed concerned and tried to help her. One of them stood in front of me, hands up as if to intervene, while the other reached to help Beth up, struggling with her heavy backpack. "Thanks for your help, guys, but I can take it from here," I told them. "And who are you?" The one in front of me challenged, not exactly the quickest to grasp the situation. "I'm her husband, the father of her 2 children, I explained. There was a moment of uncertainty from them until they looked to Beth for confirmation. Fortunately, she affirmed my claim. Sitting on the ground, she turned to them and said, "Thank you, but I'm okay now." As they muttered about their thwarted plans, I helped Beth out of the massive backpack she was carrying. "How did you find me?" she asked in disbelief. "You've been my partner for 25 years, Beth. Did you think you could really get away from me?" I said, half joking. She sat there, speechless, as I adjusted the straps on my lighter pack to fit her. I was taken aback by the weight of her pack when I tried it on. It had to be at least 40 or 50 pounds. We'd need to lighten that load soon. Once her pack was adjusted, I helped her to her feet. She hesitated before accepting my hand. "I can't believe you're actually here," she whispered, almost in disbelief. "You're not dreaming, Beth," I reassured her, helping her into the lighter backpack I had been carrying. Her face lit up in relief. "This one's much lighter." Adjusting the waist belt, shoulder straps, and sternum strap for her brought me closer to her than I had been in a long while, a proximity that felt somewhat uncomfortable. "Let's get moving, Beth. We need to find a campsite. We've got a long day ahead of us tomorrow." It took us only about 15 minutes to locate a suitable camping spot. Throughout our hike, Beth and I remained silent, even when she stepped up to walk beside me, intertwining her hand with mine. It wasn't the most practical move, considering we both were using hiking poles, but I didn't object. The last thing I wanted was for her to feel the need to wander off again. "Just relax," I suggested to her. "Let me set up our camp for tonight. We can talk if you want, or not. There's no pressure. We'll have plenty of time tomorrow." Beth seemed to accept this, taking a seat on a nearby log and observing me quietly. "I need to call your parents to let them know you're safe," I mentioned. "Do you want to talk to them?" She simply shook her head. When I called, her mother answered, her voice laced with concern. "Honor, where are you? Have you found Beth?" "Yes, I'm on the trail, and Beth is with me. We're setting up camp for the night. It'll take us a day and a half to reach the truck, and then another 7 or so hours to drive back. Is she okay? What has she said? Her father inquired, his voice joining in, indicating they were on speakerphone. She's tired but all right. It's been a tough hike, particularly the uphill parts. We haven't really had a chance to talk yet. My phone battery is low and I can't recharge it, so I won't be able to call again until we're back at the truck. Just know she's healthy, safe, and with me. Can we speak to her? I looked over at Beth, who was watching me closely. She shook her head. She's not ready to talk right now. I'll make sure she talks to you once we're off the trail, okay? Her mother's voice trembled. Please tell her we love her. And come home quickly. I will. Mrs. D, you can trust me to bring her back safely. Promise me, Honor. Please promise. I promise, I assured her. All right. We love you both. We love you too, I replied, ending the call. Throughout the conversation, Beth remained silent, just watching me as I continued to set up camp in the fading light of the evening. Methodically, I began to unpack Beth's oversized backpack, baffled by the array of items she had packed. It seemed she had brought along an excessive amount of gear, far more than necessary for a hike like this. I sorted through her belongings, setting aside the non-essential items. Her sleeping pad was a full-size inflatable, easily weighing 3 to 4 pounds. The sleeping bag was a bulky, full-size Coleman, adding another 5 pounds. The dome tent she had packed, with its crisscrossing poles and fly, was far too heavy for a hike like this. Her primary gear alone must have weighed around 20 pounds. It looked like she had shopped at a general retail store without much guidance. Deciding that most of this equipment was impractical for our journey, I planned to leave much of it behind the next day. We might keep the sleeping bag, given the lack of alternatives. After sorting her gear, the pile of items to discard far outweighed the essentials. Throughout this process, Beth remained silent, watching me work. I set up my lightweight bug shelter and tarp, anticipating the possibility of rain. Inside, I arranged both our sleeping pads and the sleeping bags. The rest of her gear, except for a rain jacket, some toiletries, and her food, was packed back into her backpack. I transferred water from her bulky hydration bag into my more compact platypus bag and water bottle. For dinner, I decided to use her bulky cooking set and propane stove one last time, considering the substantial amount of food she had brought. Chili mac, lasagna, or beef stew? I asked her. Stew, she replied quietly. I preferred the Mountain House chili mac, but I prepared the beef stew for her. Soon, we were eating side by side. You hiked this whole trail? She asked suddenly. I don't think I could have made it another day. My feet are in so much pain. Yes, I had planned this trip for years. I researched extensively, knew exactly what gear to take, and how to prepare. It seems like you weren't as prepared with the equipment you chose. I asked the store staff for help, she explained. That's understandable, but it seems they weren't very helpful and probably just wanted to sell as much as possible. When I hiked this trail, my base weight was less than 9 pounds. Your pack and tent alone were heavier than all my gear combined. Tomorrow, we'll leave most of your gear behind. You won't need it until we get back to the car. Let's check your feet, I suggested. Take off your shoes. Beth set aside her food and unlaced her boots. I knelt down to help her remove her socks. They were cotton, not the best choice for hiking. Surprisingly, her blisters weren't too severe. I rummaged through the overly comprehensive medical kit she'd been sold, finding it unexpectedly useful. After selecting the appropriate moleskin, I carefully bandaged her feet. We'll let these breathe tonight and put fresh ones on in the morning. Suddenly, she said, I'm sorry, Honor. I reassured her, blisters are common for beginners. It's okay. She shook her head. No, I mean for everything. I've made so many mistakes. I wasn't ready to delve into that conversation. Let's not get into that right now. Okay, she agreed quietly. We should get some rest. We've got a long hike tomorrow. Our ultralight gear meant our sleeping arrangements were cramped. Within minutes of lying down, Beth moved closer to me. Hold on, BB, I cautioned. Please, Honor, she implored. With a sigh, I opened my sleeping quilt. She nestled against me, and I wrapped my arm around her. I love you, Honor, she whispered. I love you too, BB, I replied. She leaned in for a kiss, and I gently reciprocated, but only briefly. Beth, we need to take things slow. This isn't the time or place. Just a goodnight kiss, she asked. I couldn't resist giving her a gentle kiss. It reminded me of our early days, full of innocence and simplicity. But I drew back, maintaining a boundary. The quiet moments that followed were filled with a mix of emotions. Despite everything, my feelings for her remained. She whispered, Do you think we have a chance? Probably not, I admitted reluctantly. There's just too much that's happened, too many lies and betrayals. Her apology was immediate. I really am sorry. I know I've made mistakes, but I'll make it right if you give me a chance. I do love you. I know, I said, trying to put off the conversation. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. Let's not get into this now. Throughout the night, I woke up a few times, each time finding Beth clinging to me. It was a familiar feeling, one I had missed, but it also brought back memories of why we had been apart. As dawn broke, I quietly slipped away from her and started making coffee and breakfast using the last of her heavy food supplies. This would be the last morning with the stove. Beth emerged from the tent in just a t-shirt and underwear, looking as striking as ever. "Coffee?" she inquired. "Yes, it's ready. Breakfast will be in about 5 minutes. After we eat, I'll take care of your feet." While waiting for the oatmeal to cook, I deflated our sleeping pads, packed up our sleeping gear, and dismantled the tent. We ate breakfast in silence. While Beth was away for a moment, I finished packing my gear, her pad and sleeping bag significantly increasing the weight of my backpack, so much so that I had to strap her pad on the outside. By the time she returned, dressed and ready, the campsite was cleared. I attended to her feet and helped her with her boots. "Why is my gear on your pack?" she asked, puzzled. "We're only going to carry one pack from now on. We don't need most of the gear you brought," I explained. She seemed to accept this and began rummaging through the side pockets of her backpack. Suddenly, she pulled out a small nylon package with a flourish. "Look what I have." "What's that?" I asked, curious. "A portable day pack," she announced. "You brought 2 backpacks." I was incredulous. She explained, "The store staff said it'd be useful for going into town without needing to carry the larger one." I could only shake my head at the questionable advice she'd received. "I can help with something," Beth offered. "Let me at least carry my sleeping bag." I agreed and handed her the sleeping bag. She sifted through her larger pack for a few additional items before being satisfied with her selections for the smaller day pack. This pack, lacking a frame, wouldn't distribute weight as effectively as mine, but it was lightweight, probably not exceeding 5 pounds. With the added food and her sleeping pad, my pack was around 12 to 14 pounds. "I'm dreading this," she admitted. "I thought the hike would be enjoyable, but the only positive part so far has been being with you. The hike will be much easier now that you're not carrying so much weight," I reassured her. "As long as your blisters don't cause too much trouble." We returned to the trail, leaving her larger pack to the side with a note saying free. It wasn't ideal trail etiquette, but I hoped someone might find use for it. We then continued, with me carrying most of the gear and Beth carefully leading the way. The hike proved challenging, not so much physically, but emotionally. I confronted her about the issues that had arisen, including what I'd learned from Dale. "Using drugs, Beth. I'm not proud of it. It was just I can't believe Fred convinced me to try it. I was curious and, I guess, a bit bored," she confessed. "Just marijuana. What about the cocaine, the ecstasy, and whatever else you were involved in?" She was quick to defend herself. "Ecstasy. I never touched that. I tried cocaine once, and that was enough to never want it again. I know it was foolish, but I'm not addicted or anything." That's not exactly reassuring. "If you were addicted, it might explain why you kept going back to Fred." "It wasn't like that," she insisted. I couldn't help but laugh, albeit bitterly. "Why, Beth? Why keep going back to him after the first time? Once, maybe we could have overlooked. But repeatedly, months of betrayal." She seemed at a loss. "I trusted him, Honor. He was our friend. Even after the first mistake, I believed him when he said it was just that, a mistake. I don't know why I gave in again. If he gave me drugs without my knowing, maybe that played a part. I swear, Honor, if I took anything other than X, it wasn't with my knowledge." As we walked, Beth's pace slowed and I could see tears streaming down her face. He manipulated me, Honor, and I was so confused. Maybe it was because of the drugs. I really hope it was. He had photos from the second time we met. He never explicitly blackmailed me, but he always insinuated he could. He was terrible. She stopped and turned to face me, her eyes filled with pain. "I was so lost, Honor. My therapist told me there were many reasons for my mistakes. After having Billy, my hormones were all over the place. I was frustrated with you working long hours and neglecting the family. I felt unappreciated, staying at home and not using my education. I resented that your business seemed more important than us." I was speechless for a moment. "Beth, I know," she continued. "It's no excuse for what I did, for letting myself be vulnerable that first time, for not resisting the second time, especially not forgiving in when you were away in China." She then began walking faster, her frustration evident in her stride. "I was so foolish," she exclaimed, inviting him over to end things, but deep down knowing what would likely happen. "I just wanted to escape, to get high, despite everything. Even after the happiest moments, I just wanted to escape." I stayed quiet, letting her vent. After a few minutes, I cautiously asked, "What happened with Dale?" "Dale," she sighed. "The first time, I didn't know he'd be there. Fred had invited him without telling me. It was all so sudden and overwhelming. I was angry, but they didn't stop. It was like being in a daze. I can't deny there was a part of me that got caught up in the moment, but I wish it never happened. I'm deeply sorry, Honor. I never wanted any of it." Hearing her confession was heartbreaking. "I wish it had never happened too," I said quietly. Seeing it destroyed me. I had more questions, but my frustration was overwhelming. So, I remained silent. Beth didn't offer any further justifications. We hiked in silence for a long while before I finally decided to bring up another topic. "What were you thinking, BB? Running off and abandoning our kids, like you have room to talk. You disappeared for months. Hell, you weren't much of a father for the last couple of years." I tried, Honor. I tried to be the super wife, raise your kids, keep your home, be the socialite. I even tried to keep that damn company alive, but I couldn't anymore. I just couldn't." She had some valid points. I didn't want to argue with her, I just needed to understand. I know it's been difficult. Difficult. You have no idea. While you were traveling around the world, socializing with your new friends, staying with that red-haired friend, I was the town pariah. I was working hard to keep the company alive while taking care of your kids. I had to endure all the condemning people blaming me for their problems. Not perfect Honor, who left them high and dry. Nuo, just the one they call the slut, the town harlot who couldn't keep her legs closed. Well, forget them. Forget all of them. And forget you too, Honor, for abandoning your family. You might have a good reason to be upset with me, with your mom and sister, even those who worked for you. But your kids didn't deserve this. Tell me, Honor, how honorable is it to run away from your 2 children who did nothing wrong? Tell me that. She had stopped halfway through her outburst, yelling at me in the middle of the trail. Now she stood, arms crossed, glaring at me. You're right, BB, I messed up, okay. I was so messed up in the head I didn't know what to do, so I ran. I thought I was doing the right thing, putting some space between us while I settled down. The whole thing, finding out my soulmate was involved with my partner and best friend for months, that my mom was covering for you, that the whole town knew I wasn't enough for my wife, it destroyed me. I was devastated, humiliated, brokenhearted, and I didn't know how to handle it. I've never failed at anything, BB. To fail at the most important thing in my life, my marriage, was just too much to bear. I'm sorry, she sighed, then stepped forward and took my hand. You didn't fail our marriage, Honor. I did. The saddest part is I don't even really know why. She turned and started walking again at a brisk pace. So tell me about your new friend, my replacement. What is she? 18. She's not exactly my friend, and she's not 18, she's 24. I'm not staying with her. We haven't been intimate, not even close. She's just a friend. Yes, I saw the videos, Honor. I want to be your girlfriend, she sang. The hussy was practically on stage with you. It's complicated. She's nice. She's good to me. Actually, being with the family in Newfoundland helped a lot in sorting out my thoughts, I said. Sure, having fun with friends and enjoying yourself while I was struggling. Let's not forget I wasn't the one at fault, BB. I wasn't the one being unfaithful, making bad choices, breaking my wedding vows, getting the whole town to cover for you. I spent the last 10 years like I was on a never-ending treadmill, doing nothing but working. Whose fault was that, Honor? Who made you responsible for everything? How do you think I felt always coming after your business and your extended family? You were supposed to love me, put me and our kids first. I thought I was doing that. Everything I did was for us. No, I don't buy that. You couldn't take a single week off for a vacation with me in 3 years, but you could easily leave for a good time when things got tough. You could travel for your business several times a year, but not with us. Your priorities are all wrong. You were unfaithful to me. My perfect wife betrayed me. I yelled. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You turned my life upside down. I'm not perfect. I never claimed to be. I tried to be a good wife and mother, but I made big mistakes. I'm human. I err. Everyone does, even you, Honor. Even you. We walked in silence until we stopped to refill our water bottles and have lunch. While I was filtering water, she finally broke the silence. Why couldn't you forgive me, Honor? You love me and you know I love you. You wouldn't even listen to me. You didn't give me a chance. You had to know I'd do anything to make it up to you, and I'd never make that mistake again. I handed her a full bottle of clean water while refilling another. That's the thing, BB. How can I be sure? Do I know you love me, that you wouldn't be unfaithful again, that you hadn't been before? Come on, Honor. I told you. What? That you were with Fred a few times. Or was it more? That you made mistakes with his brother Dale just because he was there? Repeatedly. That you were keeping secrets from me. What else haven't you told me? What are you still hiding? What do I really know? As an old hiking rule says, the best place to carry water is inside you. I drank down an entire bottle before refilling it, while BB stared at me. You don't believe in me anymore, do you? She asked softly. Why should I? I thought our 25 years together would mean something. Really, it just makes me question everything. Were you making poor choices in college? Were you unfaithful back then when I was working for our future? What other secrets are there? Honor, please. I wasn't unfaithful before. You were the only one for me until everything went wrong. And it was just marijuana, nothing serious. Did you use marijuana in college? A few times. It's not a big deal, Beth said. Why hide it from me? You know the reason. Living up to your expectations is tough. It didn't seem worth arguing over or letting you down. So, you chose to keep it secret from me, and now you wonder why I have trust issues. I think you're just trying to find reasons not to trust me, so you feel justified in moving on with someone else. I put my pack back on and offered her an energy bar. Sure, I'm looking for excuses. It's not as if you haven't given me plenty of reason, like being unfaithful and making poor choices in our own home. She got up and started walking. Whatever, Mr. Perfect. Mr. I never make mistakes. Mr. I'm so honorable I neglect my own kids. Mr. Cold, heartless, unforgiving. We continued in silence as the sky darkened. I had hoped for better weather, but it seemed our luck was running out. The air smelled of rain, growing darker by the minute. I caught up to Beth to suggest we look for a place to set up shelter. When I reached her, I saw she had been crying quietly. I'm sorry, Honor. What's happened to us? How can we be so harsh with each other? I don't remember you ever being harsh with me in 20 years. We're both hurting. We've been through a lot, and not much of it has been good recently, I replied. Can we put aside our issues for a while? I'm emotionally drained. I hoped this hike would be an escape, a way to relieve stress. I've been having some really negative thoughts lately. I was concerned. It seemed Beth was struggling mentally, especially to leave the kids behind like that. All right, let's take a break from our problems until we finish the hike. Let's just appreciate the nature around us before the rain starts. She gave a small laugh. Typical, isn't it? We just can't seem to catch a break. The wind was signaling the approach of the storm. The sky had turned a dark gray and distant thunder was audible. I had hoped for a full day of walking, but it wasn't even 4 o'clock and we might have to stop soon. On the bright side, it seemed we had covered nearly 20 miles already. Keep an eye out for a good spot to camp, I suggested. Soon, we spotted a frequently used campsite just off the main trail. What do you think? I asked, pointing towards it. Lead the way, she said, panting. I chose not to correct her misquoted phrase. We moved through light underbrush to a cleared patch of ground. It seemed secure, with no loose branches overhead, and was slightly elevated, reducing the risk of flooding. I quickly set up the bug tent and tarp. Beth was inflating the air mattresses while I secured the tarp skylines. I found sticks to reinforce the stakes, hoping they'd hold better if the weather worsened. The sky darkened further, and thunder followed lightning flashes closely by the time we finished setting up. You're skilled at this, Beth remarked. It took me nearly an hour to set up camp alone. Sometimes it annoys me how effortlessly you do things. I could say the same about you and making friends. Everyone always liked you instantly. I always had to work hard to make a few friends. Beth laughed bitterly. You couldn't be more wrong. See how many friends you have after you let down the town hero. I have none. No one will talk to me anymore. She was organizing the sleeping gear in the tent, half outside the entrance. Even my father has turned his back on me. I could sense the impending rain and felt the first few drops. It seemed like a heavy downpour was imminent. Take off your boots. Let's get everything inside and check your feet, I suggested. Beth turned, partially blocking the tent entrance as she removed her boots. I knelt to assist her, just as the rain began to intensify. A flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed almost instantly by a loud clap of thunder. Beth gave a small shriek of surprise at the thunder. She had never liked thunderstorms. We removed her boots, and I quickly took off my own shoes. We had just gotten inside the tent when the rain intensified. With all our gear inside, space was limited. I examined her feet. The preventative measures had successfully protected against blisters. Let's leave these uncovered until tomorrow. We shouldn't have more than a half-day's walk to reach the truck. The rain was now pouring down, making conversation challenging. Fortunately, the storm wasn't cold. The day had been warm, and although the temperature had dropped, it was still bearable. While I was looking out at the rain, Beth began changing. What are you doing? I asked. I need to freshen up, and so do you, she replied. Did you know hiking can get this grimy? I hadn't really thought about it. Beth retrieved a packet of wet wipes from her bag and started cleaning herself. She glanced at me with a half smile. You'll need to do the same if you want to stay in the tent tonight. Despite thinking about the fact that it was technically my tent, I decided not to argue. In a truce, starting another argument was the last thing I needed. Changing into my boxers, I felt refreshed by the cooler air. The wet wipes were surprisingly effective at cleaning us up. Could you help with my back? Beth asked. I turned to see her, now in just her undergarments, waiting patiently. It was a challenging moment. She had been my everything, and she still looked as beautiful as ever. Helping her clean up brought back memories of happier times. And personally, I had been feeling quite lonely lately. This situation was complicated. After I was done, she offered to return the favor. Turn around, and I'll get your back, she said. I turned away, listening to the relentless rain and the sporadic thunder. Suddenly, I felt her touch on my shoulder. Please, BB, don't do that. She let out a heavy sigh. I'm sorry, I just missed you so much. Didn't you miss me? Of course, I missed you. We can't just erase all our years together instantly. Let's get warm under the blankets, she suggested. I then realized she had spread out both our sleeping bags. Hers was underneath for better insulation and comfort, and mine was on top for extra warmth. She had already settled under my sleeping bag by the time I joined. Soon, she snuggled closer. Can you hold me, Honor? The storm frightens me. I knew her fear of storms was genuine. The weather outside was ferocious, with strong winds and heavy rain. I opened my arm, and she nestled close. We lay there silently, each engrossed in our thoughts, as the storm gradually subsided. About half an hour later, the wind eased and the rain softened. Do you still love me? She whispered. Yes, I always will, in some way. No, I mean, really show me you love me, she said, her tone growing more intimate. I paused, sensing where this was heading. I don't think that's a good idea, BB. I know, it's not the best idea, but I don't care. Be with me one last time, in case this is really the end for us. Just once more, please. Her touch was gentle and persuasive, making it hard to refuse. Don't overthink it, Honor. Just for tonight, let's forget everything else. We've shared a lifetime of love. Let's relive those better moments. Please, don't make me plead. Her hand was convincing, reflecting a part of me that seemed to agree with her. She moved closer and kissed me. I didn't resist. For a brief moment, it was like the old days with Beth. I reciprocated her affection, caressing her gently. My hand trailed along her back, realizing she wasn't wearing anything. She was completely bare. Then, she moved under the blanket and helped me out of my boxers. I couldn't help but react to her touch. She briefly continued before positioning herself above me. The familiarity of the moment was undeniable. Afterward, she lay on my chest, breathing heavily. "This is where I should be," she whispered, her voice cracking. I'd been so foolish. "It's okay," I comforted her, trying to soothe her tears. Despite everything, it pained me to see her upset. She then moved in a slow rhythm, reconnecting in a way that was intimate and familiar. "It won't be long," I cautioned her. "It's been a while for you, hasn't it?" She nodded softly. "Since before everything fell apart." She kissed me gently. "Just let go whenever you need to." I responded to her, caught in the moment, and it wasn't long before I reached my limit. Afterward, Beth used the wet wipes for a quick cleanup for both of us. The air was cooler now, and she shivered as she pulled the blanket back over us. I held her close as she snuggled against me. "Thank you," she murmured. I just held her tighter in response. After a brief silence, she started talking about the kids. How Billy was developing his speech, how well Marie was doing at school. It was a bittersweet reminder of the complexities of our situation. As she spoke, her hand gently caressed me, eventually wandering lower. We lay there for a while, and I found myself reacting to her touch. She kissed me softly and positioned herself closer. "Is this okay?" she asked with concern. "More than okay," I responded. She smiled before we shared a more prolonged and connected moment. This time felt different, more intense. I could sense her response growing stronger. She called out in the height of the moment, and then her movements became more fervent. I could hear her familiar sounds once more before reaching my own peak. We spent an hour reminiscing quietly, her touch gradually evoking a response from me. Outside, the wind had calmed, and the rain was a light patter. She moved under the blanket, using gentle motions to bring me back to full attention. I tried to push aside any negative thoughts, focusing instead on the positive memories of our past. When I was ready, she lay beside me. "It's your turn now, however you like," I responded, embracing different positions, each evoking different reactions from her. She was expressive and engaged, reaching her peak multiple times before I did as well. Afterward, she held on to me, a soft sound of contentment in her voice. "We were always so good together. I didn't realize how much until..." She stopped abruptly. "We agreed not to discuss that tonight, BB. Okay," I reminded her. "Yes, Honor. I understand. I'm sorry. That's not enough," I said, half serious. "Your task now is to, well, you know." I hinted at a playful yet intimate act. She laughed, then hesitated. "But you've already. I mean, it might take a while." "That's the consequence," I replied. I turned on my small headlamp for a better view, but her efforts were initially in vain. Yet, watching her was still enjoyable. When she began to shiver, I wrapped the blanket around her, offering warmth as she continued her gentle efforts. The cool air contrasted with my rising warmth. Despite the physical connection, I harbored doubts about the implications of our actions. I hoped she wouldn't misinterpret this as a resolution to our deeper issues. The conclusion of our moment was subdued. I was gentle, and as I finished, she cried out softly. I kissed her neck and moved away, leaving her resting quietly. "I'll always have love for you, BB, I said softly. "I know, Honor," she replied after a pause. She took some time to clean herself with wet wipes, sitting beside me and attending to me as well. The used wipes joined the growing pile in the corner of the tent. I drew her close, covering her with the top blanket and kissing her cold cheeks, trying to share some warmth. She held onto me tightly. As I drifted towards sleep, I heard her whisper, "Thank you for tonight. I'll always love you, Honor. Always." I slept soundly, only waking when Beth kissed me awake. Opening my eyes, I saw her already dressed. "Good morning, sleepyhead. We need to get moving." "Morning," I groaned. She chuckled and nudged me to get up. After getting dressed, I stepped out of the tent for a moment, and upon returning, Beth handed me a bottle of water. She was busy packing up, and I helped by taking down the tarp. "How are your feet feeling?" "Much better, thanks to the moleskin." "I'll be fine." We packed up quietly, each lost in our own thoughts. Beth had her pack ready and waited as I adjusted mine. She handed me an energy bar and a Snickers. I appreciated her thoughtfulness. "We can eat while we walk," she suggested, setting off ahead. I quickly caught up with her, and we walked side by side. "Are you okay?" I asked, curious about the shifts in her demeanor. "As okay as I can be," she replied. "Let's not waste time. I miss the kids." Her response lingered in the air as we continued our journey, each step taking us closer to the end of our time together on the trail. We had just started walking, easing into the rhythm of the hike, when Beth began to share her thoughts. I was aware of it, you know. I tried to deny it, hoping everything would somehow resolve itself. But deep down, I knew. After the second time with Fred, I realized things were beyond repair. You have a firm sense of right and wrong, and I knew I had crossed a line. Part of me didn't stop because I felt guilty, yet I also knew I had already lost you due to my own foolishness. I considered letting her continue, but I needed to express my feelings too. It's not entirely like that, BB. I think we might have had a chance to resolve things if it was just a one-time error. But involving my family, letting the whole town witness our issues, and repeating the same mistakes, especially during my trips, it just compounded everything. Maybe, even if you had forgiven me, things would never be the same, right? She asked. No, they probably wouldn't, I acknowledged. Our morning hike continued in this way, alternating between silence during the harder parts and sporadic, less heated discussions. There was one more issue that bothered me, and I knew I had to address it for closure. Tell me about Fred, I said. That man, he's gone. Left just after you did. He abandoned his family and vanished. The last time I saw him was when I fired him for falsifying his timesheets. He was claiming full work hours while you were away, which I knew wasn't true. Maybe half that, if even. She laughed, which seemed odd to me. Fred tried to argue until I confronted him harshly. He became angry, and I had to defend myself before calling security. The next day, some colleagues caught up with him and made it clear he wasn't welcome in town. Do you know where he went? I inquired. I have no idea, and I don't care to know. He played a big part in ruining my life. Yes, I made my choices, but he was a catalyst. Your friends leave much to be desired, Honor. After another lengthy silence, it was Beth who broke it. How long are you staying around? Have you thought about getting back into your old business? I'm uncertain about the future. I have some ideas, but they don't include going back to Honor Energy. I'm considering a new venture, but this time, I'll be more careful with my hiring choices. I'm done with them too. I worked hard, but I felt unappreciated. The whispers and comments were too much. I won't put myself through that again, so I suppose that chapter is closed. She slowed down, allowing me to catch up, and we walked together as the path widened. Will we see each other often? You're the mother of my children. While I'm here, I'll be around. We'll probably see quite a bit of each other, I responded. But you won't be staying with us anymore. No, I have my own place now. She let out a sigh. Part of me wishes you'd just leave for good. It might make it easier to move on, to leave my mistakes behind. They're my children too, BB. I know, Honor. I'm glad you're realizing that. I won't keep you from them, ever. You're always welcome at my house. Her words marked a change in perspective. It was her house now, not ours. We were both beginning to accept our new reality. Reaching the parking area, I stepped out from under the trees, while Beth paused at the edge of the pavement. I'm parked over there, I pointed out. This is it, isn't it? Once I get into the truck, it's over. The hike was just an escape. Now I have to face my reality. It will get better. The kids miss you, and we have a 5th birthday to plan this weekend. Beth nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. She then managed a forced smile and walked past me to her truck, tossing her pack into the back. I need you to promise me something before I get in the truck, she said, standing by the side with her arms crossed. What is it? You'll have to feed me. Once we leave the park, I'm in dire need of a good meal. I'm famished. We can definitely do that, I replied. After stowing my pack in the back, alongside hers, and retrieving my wallet, keys, and phone, I opened the truck door for her. She climbed in and immediately removed her boots. I got in on the driver's side, started the truck, and connected the phone charger. We should call your family. Are you ready for that? She nodded and took the phone to make the call. I overheard only her side of the conversation. Hi, Mom, it's me. Yeah, we're heading back now. No, let's not discuss that at the moment. Honor and I will talk about it when we get there. She then turned to me. How long until we get back? About 7 or 8 hours. It's 2:12 now. Back on the phone, she said, we should be there between 10 and 11 tonight, barring any issues. I'm not sure, she continued. Like I said, we'll talk later. Can I speak with the kids? She spent a good 10 minutes talking with Marie and a little with Billy while I drove north. I even chimed in briefly on speakerphone. After the call, she was in tears again. I offered some comfort. Things will work out. No, they won't. Maybe they'll improve a bit, but it'll never be completely right again. Can we avoid that topic? At least until after I've eaten. What about my car? She inquired. I'll have someone take care of it. It'll be back at your place by tomorrow. The rest of the journey was uneventful. We stopped in Front Royal for a substantial meal, and Beth slept for most of the drive. While she rested, I made some calls, touching base with Darren about starting on the business plans and updating Janie, promising her a more detailed conversation the next day. A couple of hours later, I woke Beth for another meal stop around 7. At 10:45, I arrived at the house where we used to live together. There was an emotional welcome and some tough conversations. The children woke up, so we spent a little time with them before tucking them back into bed. After midnight, I left to spend the night in my own place in town, alone. As I was leaving, Beth gave me a hug. Good night, Arnold. Thank you for coming to get me. Maybe you can visit tomorrow to see the kids, and we can talk about plans for Marie's birthday. I'll be there. It was notable that this was the first time Beth had called me Arnold instead of Honor. It seemed like a shift, a recognition of how things had changed between us. Part of that change was admittedly due to my own actions, and despite understanding that, it still felt painful. I realize I don't treat her like my wife anymore. I just treat her as a random girl from a pub, and sometimes I forget that she's a mother to my kids. And that makes me feel hollow sometimes. My comment: hope you guys liked the ending. If you did, hit that sub. I know I made some mistakes in the editing, and that is because I am exhausted from my day job. Hope you appreciate my uploads. I'll try to improve from here on out, so hit that sub and bell and see you in the next Love TV.